Welcome back, everyone. I would like to invite you all to take a seat if you have not done that already. For those who have just entered, I am Aditi Mishra from the International Forestry Students Association and also representing the Youth in Landscapes Initiative. And I'm very happy to be here with you all today. Now, before proceeding, I would like to remind everyone about some general items. Please be mindful of the COVID-19 regulations. Keep your masks up at all times, unless when you are speaking or having a snack. Join the conversations on social media as well, along with the thousands of our virtual participants. And please don't forget to use the hashtags, #GLFclimate and #ThinkLandscapes. Remember to check the agenda online as well. In case any changes happen, they will be added there. Staff are available throughout the event to assist with you in case you need anything. And please look for the white lanyards or go to the registration desk for any assistance. Please listen to the announcements regarding the agenda via the PA systems. You can also view the upcoming sessions on the digital signage throughout the venue. Now, I'm very excited to leave the floor for the first plenary of the day, starting with the GLF Managing Director, John Colmer. The floor is yours, John.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to our friends in the Americas. Welcome to GLF Climate, broadcasting from this beautiful University of Glasgow alongside COP26. This is our first hybrid digital conference, and it is a great day for our community. It is the culmination of a journey that began in Paris in 2015. At GLF Paris, we had over 3,400 participants in 70 countries that day. Some said it felt like a rock concert, the way they rushed the door in the first morning. Some of you may have been there. But we also noticed something very cool. That day, there were also 350 people that joined us online. And we immediately began working on a digital strategy that brought us to where we are today. At GLF Climate, that's reversed. 380 people will join us over the next 3 days in this hall. But 3,500 participants have already registered to join us over the next 3 days, and that's from 96 countries. There are about 1,600 people out there right now. Digital conferences are more inclusive, more diverse, more equitable, save public funds, and share information faster. We have already reached 28 million people through social media for this conference. And then there are the carbon emissions. That's the thing that everyone forgets. Or for things first. Over the last 3 conferences, digital conferences, we've saved enough energy to heat more than 3,000 American houses for a year. Those are big houses. Who are the participants? They're local change makers, farmers, indigenous people, community-based organizations, youth, local entrepreneurs, policymakers, and bankers. And they're over 50% women. That carries through to the 370 speakers we will have here over the next 3 days, most of whom are not here. 48% are women. 45% represent indigenous peoples, youth, and community-based organizations. They are the voices of people we never hear from but should hear from. They are the people who cannot afford or are unable to travel to Glasgow because they could not get a visa, or they do not have access to the COVID vaccine. With this wonderful technology that is next door in the room around us, we can bring the COP and future COPs to the people and the people to the COPs. We can no longer afford to keep them out of these important conversations. Welcome to the GLF, and welcome to the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for these wonderful insights into the GLF and the hybrid events that we are having here. So I would like to invite Susan Atkin, the Glasgow Councillor. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Susan Aiken, leader of the City of Glasgow, the proud host of COP26. I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to GLF Climate's Frontiers of Change event and the critical discussion on the importance of nature on our transition to net zero. So much of Glasgow's message on the road to COP has focused on the role of cities in the galvanising power of international collaboration, but more importantly, on cities as the locations for challenges and solutions. Most of us will be familiar with the figures. Over half the world's population live in cities, and they generate over 70% of its greenhouse gases. So much about the climate emergency is an urban agenda. But within that urban agenda, the role of nature-based solutions is absolutely vital, creating safer, cleaner, more livable places. The bang for the buck that we know investment in cities will deliver in the decarbonisation agenda over the next decade is equally applicable to nature-based solutions. In terms of the ecological, environmental and social gains and the well-being of so many of our citizens, natural interventions are bound up within our transition. And that's particularly true for Glasgow, a city once defined by shipyards and heavy industry, and which continues to contend with the deep physical and social scars of our high-carbon past. Translated from Scotland's native Gaelic language, Glasgow translates as the green place. Those unfamiliar with our city might find that ironic, given that just 30 years ago we lived with the unenviable tag of Europe's preeminent post-industrial city. But we boast more accessible green space and parkland than almost all comparable European peer cities. And there's much to commend in our efforts to place trees and forestation within our transition plans. Our commitment to increase the number of trees across the Glasgow City region by a further 18 million over the next 10 years, the reclamation of former vacant and derelict land within a traditional blue-collar neighbourhood for hugely successful programme of outdoor activities and community engagement, our involvement in tiny forests, the UK-wide programme to create hundreds of small wooded areas no bigger than tennis courts in disused plots of urban land across the UK, and Glasgow's Avenues programme, where the planting of street trees is central to the redesign and reprioritisation of key city thoroughfares and delivering a host of social, environmental and economic benefits. I hope that on your visit to Glasgow you'll experience not just a city going through transition, but one that's delivering on our ambition to place nature front and centre of our solutions for a sustainable, healthier and greener future. Thank you.
We are facing a climate emergency. The planet is on track for 3 degrees of global warming by the year 2100, and we're already seeing the early signs, from heat waves to droughts to wildfires and floods. Scientists say we could soon reach what are known as climate tipping points, which are small shifts in the climate system that can have drastic long-term consequences for the entire planet. The Amazon rainforest could dry up, the Gulf Stream could shut down. Even the ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica could soon melt, causing sea level rise around the world. But what if we could prevent that? What would it take for us to say, enough is enough? To reach a positive tipping point that can lead to the more radical change that we need. Think of the end of apartheid, or women's suffrage, or the fall of the Berlin Wall. These were all revolutionary moments that happened when a critical mass of people got together and said, it's time for a change. So where is our positive tipping point for the climate? As individuals, we can all make tiny changes like reducing our energy use or eating less meat. But it's when we all work together that our voices stand a chance of being heard. Every sector of society has a role in this. We need to join forces to demand that our leaders take real, decisive action to stop climate change. We need to overcome our fossil fuel addiction and invest in clean energy instead. And more fundamentally, we need to rethink economics to not only focus on growth, but also deliver healthy, just, and sustainable livelihoods for everyone. We need to do this together, and we need to do it now. Welcome to the Frontiers of Change.
Welcome everyone to GLF Climate, live from the University of Glasgow. I want to say thank you so much to the thousands of you who are joining online from home, the office, and also all of you here in the hall in person. I want to say thank you because we need to do this together. We need to be in conversation together, being frank and honest about our realities. And this is what we're talking about, building a positive tipping point for climate. This is absolutely crucial. We at the GLF believe that the solutions are in the landscapes, where people live and work, and the way that we can uncover and unearth them is through these conversations that happen globally, locally, from the grassroots all the way up. And the reality is, we cannot deliver against the Paris Agreement goals without addressing deforestation, without transforming our global food systems, and transforming our economies by mainstreaming sustainable finance. This is what the event is all about, and this requires systems change. But how do we achieve this change? What conditions are needed, and who is responsible for what? This is what we want to answer in this opening plenary on positive tipping points. Positive tipping points is about planting seeds of positive change at multiple scales, from the grassroots, regional, global, and across sectors, to create positive feedback loops that take us from spiraling into climate disaster to spiraling towards the future that we want. And to get us thinking about how to do this, we have 5 incredible speakers from across scales and sectors, and I'd like to invite you now to join me on the stage, and they're going to tell us what is needed. They're going to talk about the positive signs that they're seeing across the world and tell us exactly what needs to be done to achieve this transformative change. So, we have an opportunity for the next 30 minutes to listen. No matter where you are, what you do, what you studied, we have an opportunity to critically ask ourselves, what role can I play in creating a positive tipping point? What small actions can I make to move us towards transformative change? So I want to ask that we open our hearts and listen deeply, as we heard at the COP, and ask ourselves these questions. So I have the honor to introduce our first keynote speaker, a climate leader from a country with the 3rd largest rainforest in the world, a forest the world cannot afford to lose. I want to now invite the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, James Marape, who is joining us via video message.
Hello and greetings from Papua New Guinea. I am delighted to join you virtually today at the opening of GLF climate event and to address the first session on Forest Day. Following the high-level Leaders Summit sessions on Monday and Tuesday, we have high expectations from COP26. Expectations, however, are not results or outcomes, and it is virtually important that we go beyond good intentions and lofty pledges. We must move beyond words and take actions. As a leader of a forest nation and coming from a forest people, we have also been immensely gratified by the attention that forest has triggered as we seek to reconcile the interconnected challenges of biodiversity loss, deforestation, and climate change. God has blessed us in Papua New Guinea with about 13% of world's tropical rainforest and 6% of world's biodiversity. These global assets we want to help preserve. We continue to call for actions that commensurate the level of emissions. That is only fair as we contemplate our need to pursue development, but remain cognizant of our collective responsibility to contribute to environment adaptation and mitigation, and our collective efforts through the MDCs to keep temperatures under 1.5 degrees Celsius. Forest has often been glossed over or misrepresented in international fora and agreements. Amazing, the word forest was absent from both the 1972 Stockholm Conference and the 1992 Rio de Janeiro Conference. Moreover, forests were absent from the FDC goals and were relegated to mention, in a few targets under SDG 15. We have seen prior forest-specific interventions, such as the New York Declaration on Forests in September 2014, by 40 countries, but typically these are not legally binding and carry no mention of means of implementation. Yet as COP26, we have seen a historic announcement and endorsement by over 110 world leaders to end deforestation by 2030. Granted, this is not legally binding, but listening in to my fellow world leaders, you could see it was taken as read that these were morally binding agreements. There is no room for going backwards and no appetite for underachievement. Most importantly, though there was a provision for nearly $20 billion to support forest protection, management, and restoration, but for too long we have deluded ourselves that forests could be valued at a meager $10 to $20 per ton of CO2, ignoring the prime values of ecosystem functioning, water cycling, biodiversity protection, timber value, and the cultural.
Thank you. I feel that it's only fitting that at the beginning of Forest Day that we're reminded of the importance of protecting, conserving, and sustainably managing our forests. And I have the honor now of welcoming to the stage a representative from the government of Papua New Guinea, the governor of Oro Province, and the member of the National Parliament of Papua New Guinea. Governor Jufa, thank you so much for being here with us today. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here at such a wonderful location. It's very awe-inspiring. My name is Gary Jufa, and I come from the Oro Province within the Hunjara tribe, the Soriane clan. And I would like to pay homage to the clan owners who have been custodians of this land where I now stand. I want to talk about how we as a people, a forest people, remain connected to our nature, connected to our forests, connected to all the biodiversity within those forests. And I feel that what has happened in the world is that too many have become disconnected from nature. COVID is a reminder of that. COVID is a red flag and alarm bell ringing to remind us that too many of us have become disconnected from nature itself. We need to reconnect. And the positive signs that this is already happening. I see hope when I have attended COP26 and heard the pledges made, heard the strong statement made about how we can assist those who are custodians and stewards of these forests and who protect the amazing biodiversity that is so vital to life. We need to all reconnect with nature. That is our fundamental responsibility as human beings. That is my view. That is the view of my forest peoples. And I have come here to bring a message of urgency, that if we do not do this, if we do not reconnect, then it may be too late. It may be too late, not just for us as humans, but all the other citizens of this world who also have a right to live on this only planet that we know that has life on it as we know it. I believe that COVID is a reminder. It helps us to empathize because we have been to Earth most lately what COVID has been to us. Now we can empathize. Now we know what it's like. We're very proud to partner with international organizations, reputable scientists, governments, development agencies who are now coming to listen to us and not just talk to us, but bring us onto the tables of discussion where we can together make important decisions about how we can maneuver out of this situation. Thank you very much for having me here. And I want to just say that I do not believe there are such things as specific indigenous people in this place or that place, this location or that location. We are all indigenous people, indigenous to Earth. And we have a responsibility to protect this Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think it's an important reminder to all of us, and we all share a responsibility. And though we've heard pledges this week, I love what the Prime Minister had said. There's no appetite for underachievement. And what I'd like to do now is it's really important for us to ground the conversation in science. What is the state of play? What are the actions that need to be taken? And so we have the honor of having with us today Co Barrett, the co-chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. And I'd like to invite you now to the podium to share with us what science calls for and what the evidence base is around land and climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena. Hello, everyone in the room and online. Let me just first start by saying thank you to the Global Landscape Forum for having the forethought to bring us together for positive tipping points. You know, I mean, when I deliver these assessments of the science, it's often pretty sobering, and it's so easy to feel defeated or just, you know, have a sense of all the dire nature of where the science is bringing us. But it's important to have hope. It's important to keep hope alive and to remember, as our previous speaker said, that we have the opportunity to make the kinds of positive change that's really required. But I will just spend a few minutes talking about some of the science from our most recent report, the report on the physical science of climate change that came out in August. That report was really just remarkably received. I think it hit at a time where we were in the run-up to COP. We were all experiencing extreme events around the world. And for some reason, it seems like people are really listening to the science. So let me share just a few points and then maybe end with some hopeful remarks. So our latest report shows that climate change is widespread, rapid, and intensifying. We know unequivocally that human activities have warmed the planet, with impacts from climate change occurring on scales greater than the Earth has experienced in the last hundreds of years, but in some cases, thousands of years. And this is the strongest language the IPCC has ever used to describe the connection between human activities and climate change. These changes, as we all know, are being felt in every region of the world. In fact, I want to highlight the greater focus on regional information in this report, because about 40% of the report is dedicated to regional changes and talking about regional impacts that are likely to be driven by climate. So this includes, for the first time, an online interactive atlas that contains the data that we used in the report. So this means that anyone with an internet connection can use this atlas to perform their spatial and temporal analysis at a regional level. And that's kind of the democratization of data, and we're very proud of that. The report also establishes even stronger causal links between human activity and extreme climate events, many of which we saw in that video, and they are intensifying. So as the climate continues to change, the world experiences more frequent and extreme events such as heat waves, storms, floods, and droughts. And finally, this report affirms that the Earth has already warmed about 1.1 degrees C above pre-industrial times, with every decade bringing more record-breaking temperatures. This is an undeniable and frankly alarming trend. Keeping 1.5 degrees C alive is so important. We hear it in every conversation here. And I just want to say it's still possible, but it requires us to enact rapid, large-scale reductions in the emissions of all greenhouse gases and to reach net zero CO2 emissions by mid-century. If we don't, we will surpass not just 1.5 degrees C of warming, but even 2 degrees C or higher of warming by the end of this century, which raises the risk of severe climate impacts across this planet. But let's talk about the positive signs. Let's talk about hope. So I want to just say, it is possible to keep to 1.5 degrees and to avert the worst impacts of climate change if we act now. And I just also want to say that even here in the first week of COP, I see many reasons for optimism. First, from a scientific perspective, I don't hear people questioning whether climate change is happening. I think the science has really stuck, and people are not asking, is that real? They're asking, what can we do about it? And how can we act together to solve the problem? I am encouraged by the pledges that have been made of support and commitments this past week. The commitment on deforestation and the commitments on methane, they are really monumental. And the amount of financing that is being pledged to help developing countries deal with this issue is astounding. And I have real faith that the pressure is on and we are going to actually make some transformational change. And then maybe lastly, I'll just say, and John, you referenced this in your introduction, you know, we are really hearing the voices of many more people in this conversation. I was talking earlier as we were preparing for this panel, the IPCC had to hold a virtual approval session in order to approve our report. And we thought that was going to be a tremendous challenge. It turned out we had so many more developing country representatives able to participate because we were doing it virtually. And that enhanced the diversity of our conversation. It helps us to embrace, the perspectives from every side that we need to consider as we come up with the best solutions for climate. So with that, I just want to say I'm so happy to have been here today with you and to join this illustrative panel and to listen to what follows. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's our honor to have you here with us. And thank you for referencing the point on how diversity is being included more, even in these reports. And I think this is something that we have really discussed a lot at GLF, right? In framing ourselves as a knowledge-led platform. It's modern science, but there's also the wisdom, the traditions, the skills held by those who have managed land for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I think it's important for us now, as we hear from a knowledge holder and hear from the IPCC, that we also now hear from an Indigenous leader, right? That we hear from the perspectives. And so I want to now introduce Galina Angarova, Director of Cultural Survival, an Indigenous-led NGO and nonprofit. Welcome, so thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Galina Angarova, Sembenahundutunahudud, that's a greeting in my native language. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you, GLF, for inviting. I come from the Abzai clan of the Herit Nation of the Buryat peoples. We lived on the shores of Lake Baikal for millennia, and I'm here representing my organization, Cultural Survival. We're almost 50 years old, Indigenous-led, Indigenous rights organization that works to uplift Indigenous people's self-determination, cultures, and political resilience since 1972. We're a small staff of 29 people, but we are based in our communities. Most of us are based in working from our communities and have intimate relationship with our own elders, with our own land. We're working through a rights-based approach, holistic rights-based approach through advocacy, capacity building, and grant making and communication on the nexus of themes of Indigenous climate change solutions, land and livelihoods, the leadership of Indigenous women. So I want to emphasize why women, why Indigenous women. As an Indigenous woman, I know that we don't only carry water or babies, we carry solutions, we carry the future. We uplift our families, we uplift our communities, and we uplift our societies. We're not only storytellers or traditional knowledge holders, we're also land defenders and water protectors, and we have done so for millennia. That's why it is important to support Indigenous women's leadership. So I was asked a question by GLF, what are the conditions that are needed for change to happen? Indigenous peoples manage over a quarter of the land surface, and these territories and lands are a home to 80% of the remaining biological diversity. So what's the magic? What's the solution? The solution is that as Indigenous peoples, we carry traditional knowledge. And that traditional knowledge was born from that direct relationship between land and our people. And that's the magic solution. It's the brilliance, it's the local brilliance of the people who live on the land that guides us to protect our land. When I'm home, when I arrive to my village, I feel the land right away. It speaks to me right away. So I know what to do because it instructs me. That's what we say, original instructions, because the land informs our people about how to protect. When I go to the forest, I don't pick up every berry in the forest. I leave berries for generations, for the species, for the birds to regenerate themselves or sprout the seeds. The Indigenous peoples globally have always known how to protect their land. So what I want to say, what's needed is the political will. Let our people protect our forests. Let our people protect our lands. Let the governments, leave us alone. We know what we're doing, and we have done so for millennia. If we want to retain the 25% of the land surface and the 80% of the biological diversity, let the Indigenous people do that. So that's my message to the nation states. Over 100 indigenous activists are right now fighting in the walls of the exhibition center to put references to indigenous people's human rights and protections of indigenous people rights in Article 6 and loss and damage on financing. Please listen to us. We have been coming to these spaces for decades, for years, and we're not heard. Listen to us. This is, I think, that's the solution. And again, I want to emphasize local solutions. I don't believe in scalability. I don't believe in scalable solutions. I believe in local solutions because that brilliance is only coming from the local people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was incredible for us to be informed by you, to be guided by you in this moment. I think it's absolutely crucial for this message to be heard. And whether you're a policymaker or not, there is a responsibility for us to act and support and amplify the work, the messages, the demands that you're asking for here at COP. And this morning in a session that was held, we heard from an indigenous young person who was just talking about the gap between, in the search for education and moving to a city, just the gap that then is created between the elders and between the young people, between the knowledge that was held in generations and the science that's taught at school. And so it's so important for us to maintain this intergenerational conversation. And so we have an opportunity now to hear from Marinelle Sumuk Ubaldo, who is a climate justice advocate, social worker, and country coordinator for the UN Conference of Youth in the Philippines. So I want to now invite Marinelle to give us her message. She's sending via video.
Hi, I'm Marinelle Abado. I am a climate justice advocate from the Philippines. I have lived through Super Typhoon Haiyan, and I have seen the death. I have seen how devastated our community was. I have still a lot of friends and relatives that are missing up until this moment. And now the IPCC report came out, and we all know that we are in a code red. But in the Philippines, we experience an average of 20 typhoon per year. And we lost so much lives. I have friends who were killed because of being red tagged as an environmentalist. In 2019, we were the third most dangerous country to be an environmentalist. And it posed a lot of risk to a lot of climate activists in the Philippines. And there are actually a lot of conditions that we can do for system change, because we can always, what we can do is we can register to vote and vote for the right leader that is an ally to the environment, because the government, our leaders as the authority, the resources, and the capacity to make change happen. And even if we do so many individual things, we always need to make sure that we aim for system change. But those individual things that we do, we should not ever disregard them, because if we put it collectively, that is a huge success for us, because a collective action has a big impact for the environment. One person could start a movement, and we should never underestimate our power to make a change. And we have always to make sure that our leaders in the corporations fueling climate change are accountable and are making the right decisions for the communities, because it is the communities that are suffering too much but are emitting less carbon emission. The Philippines is only emitting 0.3 carbon emission in the global carbon emission. But I have seen already some positive signs in the communities. The communities are doing their own projects. The communities are doing their own initiatives to combat climate change, to adapt and mitigate the effects of the climate crisis. And it is just right that we support these initiatives on the ground, that we push our leaders and big organizations to support the existing projects in the ground, because they are sustainable. They are initiated by the community themselves. and it is just right, and they deserve to be supported on the projects that they have initiated. All of those positive change that we see with the behavior of people, and we can see a lot of momentum already by the youth reclaiming our right to a safe environment, reclaiming our right to a better future. All those positive change could actually mean a big thing for us if our leader would listen to us. And we have seen a lot of progress already, and we're seeing the momentum that we have made is actually changing mindsets of so many people, those people who are denying climate change. Even those from the first world countries are being really inclined to making action, because they know that wherever you are in the world, whatever your economic status is, you will be affected by the climate crisis. The climate crisis is anti-poor. It is making people poorer. It is killing lives. It is killing livelihood. And I have seen it in my own eyes. Friends and relatives have died, and they are still missing 8 years, almost 8 years after Super Typhoon Haiyan. We cannot wait for more disasters to come to act. And it is just right that we are here now thinking and supporting so many organizations, individuals who are doing a lot of amazing actions in their own communities. We should not be intimidated. We should keep the resistance, and we should aim for more and demand for accountability from our leaders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marinelle. I hear you. I think we hear you. I hear the pain that you've shared with family and friends being missing from climate disasters, the fear of being an activist in an environment that's challenging and intimidating, but also the hope, the determination, the will to resist and to reclaim your rights, to reshape political landscapes and mindsets. So we've heard these messages. There's been positive signs, but there's also very real challenges from government, from scientists, youth, civil society. But how does finance fit in? There's a big question, and okay, there's money that's put on the table, but how do you allocate it in a way that's transformative, that really moves us forward? And so we have the honor of having a representative from the Bezos Earth Fund, Dr. Kelly Levin, who's the Chief of Science, Data, and Systems Change, a perfect person to share with us your message. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Levin.
Thank you so much. What a thrill to be with you today. There are not that many sessions that are called positive tipping points and that are about system change, and Marinelle said it. And the placards in the streets, as we probably navigated over to the university, for those that are here, you saw it. It said systems change, not climate change. And that is exactly what we need. At the Bezos Earth Fund, I'm also a director of something called the Systems Change Lab, which is helping to inform the investments that we make. And essentially, we're looking across the systems that we need to transform, from energy to buildings to industry to transport to land to oceans to freshwater to finance to governance, to the way in which we measure well-being and our economy, and looking at the major transformations that are required. And this is not rocket science, and there are probably tons of ways to kind of slice and dice this, but the science tells us what's needed, and there is a lot of convergence in the literature. And you can identify about 40 or 50 shifts that are required. In the land sector, for example, you can think about the demand and the supply side shifts that have to happen. You need to protect land, you need to restore land, you need to tackle the demand side as well. You need to shift diets, you need to deal with food loss and waste, better management, et cetera. And for each one of these transformations, we are tracking to what extent we're on track, to what extent are we close to reaching these positive tipping points where a little bit of an extra nudge might be incredibly helpful to kind of push it over. To what extent are we completely off track, or actually we're headed in the wrong direction altogether? Deforestation is a perfect example where we're headed in the wrong direction altogether, where deforestation rates and emission rates have been increasing instead of declining. And we recently did a study that looked at 40 or so indicators that would be aligned with 1.5. And the scale of acceleration of change is really quite tremendous. If you think about tree cover gain that's required, that we need to restore lands 3 times faster than we're doing it. Also with wetlands, restoring wetlands 3 times faster in the next decade. And how are we going to get this scale and pace of change? And that's where positive tipping points come in. Some of you may have heard about a $3 billion commitment that the Bezos Earth Fund has made to have a 3-part approach. 1, conservation protection. And this is supporting the 30 by 30 initiative and those governments, civil society around the world that have committed to protecting our land, our ocean. 2, restoration, a restoration agenda, which is so critically restoring what we've lost in the degraded areas. And 3rd, sustainable food management and food systems and agriculture. And these we really see as a 3-pronged stool that is so essential to the problems that we're facing. Then the question is, how do you actually affect change in those systems? And I think what we've all learned is that, unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. These are a series of puzzle pieces. And they're puzzle pieces with the right policies, the right incentives, behavioral change, and it is going to take all of these puzzle pieces to align, sometimes with some kind of exogenous shock, a window of opportunity that the stars align, and we can make rapid change. But how can we deliberately nudge rapid change? And I wanted to talk about 2 examples where we are spending a lot of our attention thinking about. And the first is around the Congo Basin, where we have made a commitment to invest $100 million, a package of grants over 4 years. And here, the puzzle pieces that will need to come together include a range of different activities. First, identifying which of these areas are high biodiversity and carbon areas to support. How do we build coordination mechanisms among the many different actors who work there? How do we develop supportive policies? How do we support indigenous people and local communities? How do we expand and support the management of protected areas? How do we hire park rangers, training, and then essentially monitoring to make sure that we learn from our experiences? And here, it's just a series of things that come together, which I think will enable us to reach some of these positive tipping points. The second example I wanted to talk about was restoration in Africa. And there is an initiative that many of you probably know about called Africa 100, AFR 100, where we have seen a commitment by 32 countries to restore almost 130 million hectares of land. But yet only 4 million hectares of land right now are under restoration. That is less than 4%. Why is that the case? And we talked about pledges and implementation of pledges. And here the question is, how do you actually speed this up, given that there is political will? And here, again, it is not going to be a single solution. It is going to be a question of investable projects. It's going to be intermediary finance, trusted monitoring systems, supportive policies. And when you think about the number of actors on the ground, these are not a few sets of actors, but here these are grassroots African entrepreneurs, community leaders who are going to be the ones who are solving this problem. There was a recent RFP issued for restoration in Africa in some of these countries by One Tree Planted and World Resources Institute, and they had over 3,200 responses from different local organizations. And then the question is, how do you bring that to scale? And what are the financing mechanisms to develop that investable targeted line of pipeline of projects, financial resources to be able to enable this to happen much more quickly at speed and at scale? Especially when you think about the fact that 75% of land is community-owned in Africa. These are the types of questions that we're wrestling when we're talking about systems change and positive tipping points in the land sector. And just to think about the challenge here, I think, It's a little bit different than some of the industrial and energy sector. When you think about the fact that we've seen a 15% growth rate in renewables over the last 5 years, or electric vehicles just take off in a way that was previously unimaginable with a 50% compound average growth rate. The tipping points are a bit different here, as all of you have tremendous expertise in knowing. And the question is, how can we all work together to really make sure that we get the speed and scale that we're required? And I hope that you'll count the Bezos Earth Fund in to help make that happen in partnership with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us a glimpse of where that money is going to go and the approach that you're taking at the moment. So, and you've also brought up a lot of topics that's going to loop in really well into this next segment on the UN Decade on Restoration. But what I want to do at this stage is to invite up the Executive Director of C4 ECRAF to just pull some pieces together for us and give us some closing remarks to round out this opening plenary. Tony, over to you.
Thanks very much, Selena. Positive tipping points. What an amazing panel. And they reminded us that these tipping points are not just ecological, not just geographical. Gary presented the political tipping points that are needed in the governance of a country and mobilizing its people. Ko shared with us the scientific tipping points, the technical tipping points that was giving us hope that there could be a brighter future. And Galina, and our colleague from the Philippines, gave such a brilliant example of the social tipping points that are needed, the positive tipping points that can be there in the face of climate change. And Lassie Kelly has reminded us that those financial and logistical tipping points are really important. So tipping points are not only climatic, ecological. But what's the point? What is the point? John was the one who launched us on the digital pathway, on trying to bring us together. So whether you're one of the lucky people, the 380 that will join us in this room, or you're one of the 3,500 people online, or one of the 25 million people that will be reached on social media for this conference, let's remind ourselves of that digital dimension. So please all raise your right thumb. You can do it. Right thumb. And now your left 5 fingers. These are your digits. And that is 1.5, yeah? 1.5. So let's keep it digital, okay, to make sure that we're keeping under 1.5. Thank you very much, and please give a warm round of applause to our colleagues.
Thank you so much. So this was an introduction to all of you on what positive tipping points can potentially accomplish, what they might look like, but we want to get a little bit more practical. So we talked about restoration a little bit in this opening plenary, but let's dive into it a little bit more. Is restoration an opportunity to really get us to a positive tipping point, to the social, the ecological, the governance challenges? And so what I'd like to do now is give you a poll for the audience online and in person. We should just pull it up on the screen on slido.com. And it's asking you about your feelings. So which of these options best represent how you feel about ecosystem restoration? So we get the Slido up on the screen. It should just be sli.do. But what we can do, I'll share you the options and you can tell me what you think. So the question is, which of these best describes how you feel about ecosystem restoration? Option 1. I am super confident in restoration as an entry point for triggering positive tipping points for transformative change. Option 2, restoration has a lot of potential in theory, but I think there are too many challenges to reach its full potential. Option 3, we shouldn't prioritize restoration over other topics. Restoration is more of a distraction than it is a benefit when we're talking about climate action. And lastly, I need to learn more before I can answer. So as we're pulling up this question, I think it gives you time to really think about it. You've got your sliding scale of, yes, I fully believe, I think it's too challenging, I think it's a distraction, or I'm not really sure. And maybe to just poll the people in the audience while we get those online answering. How many of you, just raising your hand, do you feel super confident you're at level 1 of I believe in restoration as a positive tipping point? Hands? Oh. The GLF community. Okay, there's a lot of hands for those who can't see. The second is restoration has a lot of potential, but I think there's so many challenges to reach its full potential. We have a few, yeah, who maybe know too much about restoration and their challenges. The third is that we shouldn't prioritize it, and it's really just a distraction. Any hands? Well, some of them might be at the march today. And lastly, I need to learn more before I can answer. Okay, so it's great to know how everyone feels. I think the audience online seems to be following to some degree the audience in the room. And I think it reflects the GLF community more broadly, but we'll come back to reflect on this in a bit once we have more answers. And what we want to do now, we have the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. It gives us this new momentum. The countries have committed and said this is important. But what does this mean? What was the hope there? So what we want to do now is invite Lena Pohl, a friend of the GLF, former Minister of Environment and Natural Resources of El Salvador, who conceived the idea of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration and led efforts for its approval at the UN General Assembly. So, Ms. Lena Pohl, we'd love for you to just tell us, what are your thoughts about restoration and positive tipping points? What was your vision and hope, and how do you feel today about where we're at? Over to you. Thank you so much for being with us.
No, to the contrary, Selena, thank you to the GLF for the invitation. As I have said on several occasions, this is the space to advance this urgent and fundamental agenda. So is Bone Challenge, who has moved forward with the commitment we are now seeing, and some other initiative. And ladies and gentlemen, before the pandemic, 32% of the population in my region, in Latin America and Caribbean, lived in conditions of moderate or severe food insecurity. 204 million people in my region, in the middle of the 21st century. I mean, as a result of the pandemic, these already appalling figures have deteriorated. We at FAO have estimated that it is possible that we will return to the indicators of the 90s, 30 years setback in the fight against hunger. Our region, long before the pandemic, have been facing the greatest challenge faces humanity, climate change, the loss of species, of our biodiversity, and the accelerated deterioration of natural resources. The pandemic will undoubtedly deepen the crisis. At the end of 2018, the IPCC, in a special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees, warned about the effects we will see on biodiversity, crop yields, fisheries, and other productive activities. It draws our attention to the out-migration of agriculturally dependent community that is directly and statistically significantly associated with global temperature. The report points to the importance of ecosystem services and agriculture as key areas for climate action, for securing the human rights of vulnerable people, such as access to clean water and livelihoods, and also as critical resources for productive activity and the business sector, and perhaps most importantly, to ensure food security for millions of people. Biodiversity reports have also alerted us to accelerating fragmentation of natural ecosystem. With a clear understanding of the need to advance on these fronts and the importance of recovering the region's natural capital, I had the opportunity to lead the United Nations Decade Initiative for Ecosystem Restoration 2021-2030. The declaration of the decade as the decade of restoration was an effort to reverse this situation. It is true that unsustainable practices, including excessive or inappropriate exploitation in agriculture, livestock, and unsustainable forestry, have contributed to the deterioration of the quality of large tracts of land in the region. This is associated with substantial losses of topsoil, carbon and nutrient content, vegetation, and or water resources. It is estimated that tens of millions of hectares of land are already degraded in Latin America and Caribbean. But it is equally true that land use activity play a fundamental role in the region's economy. The share of agriculture in total household income is over 50% in poor rural households in some countries. This is why the decade of ecosystem restoration makes so much sense. We're talking about adopting a multifunctional landscape approach, a mosaic of interdependent land uses where ecological, economic, social, and development priorities can find convergences, balance, and complementarity, thus becoming a cost-effective instrument for achieving the goals and objectives established by various multilateral environmental agreements. This approach allows us to enhance synergies in the agendas of climate change, biodiversity, water resource, combating land degradation and risk reduction, and in turn to achieve the sustainable development goals. We are talking about large-scale restoration, ecological landscape, but also sustainable, productive landscape. Renewed vigor and commitment are needed to achieve transformative ecosystem restoration. The commitment, effort, and action of countries, the international community, civil society, the private sector, and other actors need to be re-evaluated and rethought together. This will allow us to comprehensively address the interdependencies of ecosystems, human needs, and biodiversity through a landscape-based approach to ecosystem restoration. I'm very pleased with the agreement now reached at Glasgow, the commitment of more than 100 nations to reduce methane emissions by 30% by 2030, the commitment to end deforestation by 2030. We are returning to the goal of no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, and several billions of dollars have already been commitment to reverse forest loss and land degradation. More importantly, the role of indigenous people as guardians of 80% of the Earth biodiversity has been finally recognized. And again, several billion will be allocated directly to them. We are not going to make the same mistake, say one minister from Britain. And yes, they are the ones who have to lead these efforts. I think we are realizing that restoration is not only solution for the planet. Yes, there are a lot of challenges behind that, but there is no other option, and the decade will be a success because we have no other alternative. It's a matter of survival. Now, I'm very happy, not only for the result we have had so far, but also for having led an initiative that is now bearing fruits. And thank you to the GLF for the tireless fight, and thank to you for joining this effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming back to the GLF and for sharing this crucial and important message. We're so excited to have seen the UN Decade be launched and accepted, and to be giving a platform to so many voices and local efforts that need to be heard and that need to be recognized as a solution for climate. And one of these, opportunities that it's been provided came from the GLF Amazon conference that was hosted not too long ago, where civil society organizations, indigenous leaders, Afro-descendants came together to co-create a document titled Protect Amazonia, Life is One and in Our Hands. Another example of a global perspective that really sees restoration as an opportunity, not only to restore ecosystem functioning and restore degraded lands, but to create a new sense of balance with society, to resurrect a lot of the harms that have been made to marginalized communities. And I just want to reference this because it's a really incredible call to action that is created from a regional level, talking about sustainably managing the Amazon biome for thousands of years to come, and as they have in the past. And so I think it's important that as we talk about restoration, we understand kind of the global narratives, visions, pieces that are coming out. But ultimately, as much as we would love to talk about it at the global level, what happens, restoration happens at the local level. And so what we want to do now is to begin to talk about local leadership, local challenges, local opportunities. So I want to now shift to our panel on implementers, and now invite to the stage all of our speakers and to our virtual stage. So we have Hermana Maria Marciano, a nun and coordinator of the mission in Dominican Republic and Haiti. We have Grace Isteria, the 2021 Oceans GLF Restoration Steward from Indonesia, who's restoring coral reefs. George Bazango, the Director of Operations and former Director of West Africa Operations at Tree 8. And Mwambu Wanendea, the CEO of Carrico Cafe, who's improving the lives of coffee farmers and looking at restoration from that angle. Welcome.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do at this point is play a video message that we have for Hermana Maria, who's really answered one of the first questions around moving beyond planting trees as a rhetoric, because we'll send out the message of restoration and what people hear is planting trees, and to talk about how we can move from that to a more integrated restoration approach. So can we please play the video message from Hermana Maria Marciano?
Representantes del mundo reunidos en Irlanda para esta cumbre, a la 26ª del clima, ¿no? Es para mí, como hermanos dominicas de Montevideo que trabajamos en esta isla há 28 años, es un placer hablar con todo el mundo. Yo quiero focar 2 puntos. Uno es la recuperación de las lomas, el paisajismo de las montañas, como decimos aquí en Dominicana y Haití. El paisajismo de cualquier unidade produtiva hay que ser recuperado para que a vida flua de uma maneira mais sencilla. Como nós hicimos esto aqui, não é sembrando solamente palo. Sembrar palo, sembrar uma mata é muito sencillo, pero a proposta que dê resultado que melhore a qualidade da vida da gente é o que hay que ser observado. Que a gente pueda se levantar a dignidade da gente, não se levanta com conversação e com reuniões, se levanta com produção e produção bem orientada para que a gente possa viver, melhorar as vivendas, que os filhos possam ir às escolas, que a gente tenha caminho, tenha escola. Aí é o sentido da verdadeira recuperação do paisagismo de montanha, de loma. Agora, é importante também aclarar que todo esto, la educación es el eje transversal de toda esta propuesta. Es una propuesta lenta, es una propuesta que lleva tiempo, pero para el mundo, yo puedo decir con 30 años está se recuperando cosas en Dominicana y Haití extraordinaria. Recupera agua, recupera vida. Y la gente con agua y sabiendo producir bien, deja las lomas y las lomas vão dar os benefícios que nós necessitamos. Ora, quando se habla do câmbio climático, nós temos consciência que há 100 anos atrás já estamos com câmbio climático, solamente que não hemos dado la atención debida. Es importante una propuesta de esta en cualquier parte del mundo, que haya una unidad, que haya una alianza de los actores locales con las autoridades locales y las autoridades nacionales. Esto es importantísimo para que uno vaya para un lado y otro para el otro. Aquí en esta zona hemos tenido la delicadeza de poder hacer este trabajo en conjunto y el beneficio es el pueblo. Ahora, nosotros trabajamos mucho la parte educativa del campesino y de la productora, como ustedes quieran decir. Y esta alianza, nosotros dialogamos mucho con los síndicos acá. Y una sociedad que no hay una igualdad para un trabajo, no hay democracia. Entonces nosotros tenemos que trabajar mucho en esto, recuperar la vida, recuperar el ambiente, para que esta humanidad pueda tener un derecho de igualdad. Si no, no hay democracia. Es un trabajo en conjunto, no puede se dejar un R suelto, ¿ok? Gracias. Quiero dar un consejo a todos que nos ven por este medio. Lo importante de una propuesta de esta es conocer la realidad y cultura de cada pueblo, sus necesidades y sus anhelos. Y quiero dar también este mensaje a toda la sociedad civil, las autoridades, las iglesias también del mundo entero. Vamos a luchar por la vida. Cada acción tuya tiene que repercutir en mejorar este medio ambiente que nosotros estamos viviendo, este ecosistema de la humanidad. Y que las autoridades y la sociedad civil tienen que hacer alianza para un desarrollo. Y las autoridades tienen que hacer caso, porque senão vai ser muy tarde. Y yo sé que hay cómo recuperar el medio ambiente porque estamos recuperando.
Thank you so much. I think it's absolutely wonderful to be able to get these messages from the field. This is the type of inclusivity and diversity that you don't always see happening at these COPs. And I want to now turn to you, Georges, to talk about the same kind of question, right? Moving beyond planting trees to an approach which provides multiple solutions at the same time. Do you have a story which can really capture how you've been able to do that? Yeah, please feel free.
Thank you, Salina. Thank you for JLF for giving us this opportunity to talk about our approach. And your question, it's a good question. We're talking about carbon sequestration, reduction of emission. We're talking about land and forest restoration. Yes, what the previous speaker said is very important. For us at Tree Aid, we should focus on the nature capacity to restore itself, first, and second, focus also on the need of the local communities, because we are facing some complex issues. People are suffering about malnutrition, crop production, the yields, decrease, whereas every year you are facing some drought, some floodings in our countries. Even this year, when you look at in Burkina Faso, a lot of crops dried only in September. We know that when you miss this period of crop production, for sure you'll have more than 8 to 9 months you will eat maybe one time in the day. So, the most important for tree aid, we are saying that planting trees, land restoration is key, because the trees will help to improve the soil fertility. So it will help to increase the crop production. The trees will also be a source of income and food for its communities. Taking an example, a rural community living in Burkina Faso, in the town of Leo. This is around 100 kilometers from Ouagadougou. 85% of its communities are really living under the poverty line and that only believe that growing crops, they can live only by using the natural resources they can have in the environment. But the issue is that the human activities creates a kind of degradation of these natural resources, forest and land. And this is getting worse by the climate change, what I was explaining, floodings, which accelerate the erosion and then also the loss in terms of soil capacity to produce. So what we support them is supporting them to plant what we call moringa, which is Moringa oleifera, scientific name, and baobab, which is Andersonia digitata. These trees are well known by the communities for the potential of improving food security, against malnutrition, against malaria, because in the moringa and the baobab leaves, you have iron, which is very good for the children under 5. And then also the source of income, because the demand is really high. And in the dry season, you can even access to the dry leaves for these communities. Then we supported a group of cooperative women, 20 of them, and they were able, to harvest each 3 months, every 3 months, they can harvest the green leaves to eat. They also sell, and through the assessment, we found that they increased the income from $500 to $1,400 in 2 years, which is really huge. Second, we improve the malnutrition because we reduce the malnutrition from the children under 5 by 23%. You know that in our countries, the malnutrition rate for these communities and the level of children are around 30%, which is difficult for the future of these people. So, and then also 2 years after, they will plant, the trees at farm level, so it will create some agroforestry. So by planting trees, we are now seeing that we are supporting this community to access to income, to increase the income, access to food, reduce malnutrition, improve the soil fertility, and then also to improve the practices, and then to reduce to cutting the trees and others. So planting trees is good, but when you look at the needs of these communities, we need to provide some integrated solution. Provide the trees, training, support the community to be well organized, to access to improve market, as well as also to being able to interact themselves as a group. So to create some kind of hope for these communities. So land restoration for us is key. Planting trees for us is key. But they should take account the capacity of the nature to restore himself and the need of these communities because they need to fight against poverty, they need the children to go to school, they need to improve their food and nutrition security. So for us at Tree Aid, it's very, very important to promote the nature and community-based solution when we are promoting trees. We are talking about carbon sequestration, but for the communities, what can I eat tomorrow, today and tomorrow? What to do to have income? This is the first interest. For us, we are looking about reducing the temperature. Yes, we have to combine this with the community needs. Then we are sure that we can, all of us, achieve the main objective of what we are seeking to have. To maintain the temperatures below 1.5 degree, as well as supporting the communities to improve the food and nutrition security and fight against poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing a very practical example of how restoration can be a pathway for positive multiple development outcomes. And it's amazing because we hear these stories often, and it gives us a large feeling of hope, a feeling that people had expressed, I believe in restoration as an entry point for positive tipping points. But you also talked about the importance of training and community mobilization and market access and power. So many places where we can encounter a few barriers and challenges. And so I want to ask the panelists who are joining us online, and perhaps they start with you, Grace, to just share with us one practical challenge that you've encountered and what efforts you're currently doing to try to overcome this barrier. Over to you.
Okay, yes, so the practical challenge that I experienced in the field was the youth lack of enthusiasm for diving, and it's also the low awareness of coral benefit. There are so many views that make the local youth feel that they will not get a better future if they do not work in the hospitality area. But in fact, since the COVID-19 appeared in Indonesia, most people in Bali felt the economic crisis due to the small number of tourists entering Bali. And therefore, it was a major shock that they depend their life on tourism, but the COVID makes everything worse. And many people felt despair and desperation through this pandemic. So therefore, me and my colleague believe that through planting corals, through restoring the coral restoration in Padang Bay, it will give another alternative livelihood to local people. But however, the mindset of youth makes it very difficult to spread this message. The social culture, especially, I found the new finding when I'm trying to go to the local people. So basically, me and my team want to gather youth, especially women, because we really want to empower women, because we felt that we see that maybe in Bali, most of them, the role of women and youth is rarely concerned in the restoration activities in Indonesia. It's my opinion. So we want to empower them, and what I finding in the field, we found that the people who live in the Padang Bay or in Bali, they have never seen the underwater beauty, and they are scared to swim in the ocean. And so we're really curious to want to build their awareness and their capacity, because we do believe that to restore the ecosystem sustainably, we need to empower youth so that they can become the change maker. So we need to grow their sense of belonging and also their ownership toward the landscape. So we believe that by restoring the coral reef, it will definitely improve the existing economy by opening up the new landscape. And the other one, despite that it is hard for me and the team to raise their awareness toward coral restoration, we also find it that their mindset of youth, like the beauty standard and etc., they are afraid that their skin will be tan or anything if they go to the ocean or if they go swimming. So therefore, we found it really difficult to us to search the Menti or the local people to join this movement. But however, we persuade them. We also giving them more knowledge, more impact, and we giving them more explanation. So finally, we are grateful that we finally found the 6 amazing women. And when the project started, when we are starting to teach them how to dive, and then they finally felt more open to diving, and they are also now they are really love to exploring diving, and they also have already seen the underwater beauty in the Padang Bay, and also they are really enthusiastic to planting the coral reef. So therefore, we really want to committed to really increasing the capacity so that they are able and independent to carry out restoration activities in Padang Bay, Bali, and we really hope that they also will be able to influence the another youth around them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. I love that you've touched on this because it's a societal barrier and an issue, right? When so much of society has lost touch with nature, it becomes difficult to talk about restoration, to talk about getting back in touch, to talk about diving to plant trees. And there's these perceptions that have been built, even on, you touched on employment and where people see the money and how they view their lives. And so I think this is really important as we talk about how we can make systems change and where we kind of identify the barriers coming from. Mwambu, you work with coffee farmers, and I saw a comment in the chat that was talking about rural farmers as a huge potential for greenhouse gas reduction, working with farmers on restoration. And I'd love for you to share with us some of the challenges that you've seen, how you're overcoming your barriers. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the GLF and fellow panelists for this opportunity. We're based in Bugisu in eastern Uganda on the slopes of Mount Elgon. And just to give you context, Uganda has about 1.8 million coffee farmers in the country. This is the highest number of coffee farmers in any country around the world. And they have an average family size of five to seven. So these are about 10 million people out of a population of 45 million dependent on coffee in Uganda. Now, further context, in the Bugisu area, in the 200 years between 1800 to 2000, 140 people died of landslides. In the last 20 years, double this number have died from landslides. The landslides are caused by, in part by the deforestation and the change in climate. So what we are doing in the Bugisu area is we're planting trees, indigenous trees. We've got 2 trees that we've started planting already this year, the Cordelia africana and the Abrisia coronaria. We've planted over 11,000 trees, but we don't just plant trees. We have an agroforestry expert who surveys the farms and then gives trees which are suited to the location of that particular farm and the size. But planting the trees alone will not solve it. Our local food is a staple called matoke, which is like a plantain. And every day, people cook this. It takes about 4 hours to cook for 2 meals. So we're consuming at least 5 kilograms of charcoal every day, which each kilo could be between 15 and 50 kilograms of firewood consumed. So planting trees is one way of trying to reduce this. But on the other hand, what we're also trying to do is to produce briquettes as an alternative fuel source to the firewood and the charcoal. So we are looking for partnerships will enable us to scale the reforestation of the Mount Elgon area, which is where the farmers live, is on the edge of a UN-designated, UNESCO-designated biosphere. It's a beautiful national park, lots of wild animals. So this is a crisis. This is a crisis that is unseen in this area, and it's exacerbated by the growth of the deforestation in the area. So what we found working with the local communities is getting to understand their problems, and what is very important is getting them involved so they have ownership of the seedlings that they're given. They're taught how to plant them and what each particular seedling is for. Now the seedlings are known to them. They have local names, several local names, so people know what the seedling is, and then guiding them on how to plant it, what depth, when, which time of year to plant it, and giving them the seedlings free. So we believe that with local and international partners, we can scale this program to have a material impact, not only on the reduction in landslides, but improvement in the production and quality of the coffee produced. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm seeing so many messages already in the chat, individuals from Ghana, from the Philippines, from Chile, who are reiterating the messages that they have. And really what you're saying is resonating with them. I think people are taking action when it comes to restoration and working with communities and consultations and mappings. And what I want to do now is kind of ask you a follow-up question, because we'd love to know, how can we, as global citizens, contribute to help you overcome some of the challenges that you face? What is the responsibility that we have? What is some of the burden that we can take? And perhaps, Grace, I'll go to you, and then I'll come to Mwambu.
Oh yes, so in my opinion, the thing that can be done to contribute is to support the local community in their respective places. They focus on the conservation activities and also participate in campaign to local people about the importance itself of the marine ecosystem or other landscape, and also the climate change impact towards them. And what small step So we are doing like, we tell many people around us so what step that we can take to reduce the emission on our Earth. Ultimately, saving the planet requires more than just us, you and me. It needs each and every one of us to work together for the sake of our planet, because together there's no limit that we can accomplish. I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mambo.
Thank you very much. I believe that if we can form partnerships for planting, because we have, the problem is in our area, and we know how to deal with it, but we don't have the resources to overcome the problem. We would like to be able to have partnerships so that we can have locally situated nurseries with the seedlings that we need, thereby reducing the carbon footprint by not having to transport seedlings across this area. And we believe that we can then help get more young people involved if we do have seedlings for them to plant. Now, in Uganda, for the last almost 2 years, for over 80 weeks, the schools have been closed, and they're not due to open for another 2 months. So the young people are not particularly busy right now. They don't have access to learning. And so this would be a good time to get them involved heavily in the program to plant more seedlings for their future.
Thank you. And I'd love to turn now to you, Georges, to answer, what can we do as global citizens to help you?
Yeah, for me, as what Mangod said, we need to scale our best practices from the field, and as TRIAID, that's why we are really supportive to the Green Wall initiative in Africa, because it's a multi-actors, it's a kind of partnership we need to build, to be able to achieve the results. And we need also to invest. Invest because talking about the restorations need more money, because we are investing in the communities. That's very important, because that communities, we need also to, if we don't invest in communities, we invest only on tree planting, be sure that within the 10 years, we will come back again. Because people will like to destroy what they plant, because the soil is more fertile there to continue to grow the crops. So investing in tree planting, we need to match by investing in the community to fight against poverty in the communities. That is, for me, this morning I was explaining to somebody that, sometimes we're talking about economic growth. Economic growth will let the community behind. Today we found that there are some problems. And we are talking about carbon sequestration, temperature to keep it in 1.5. Yes, it's good, but we're not talking the communities which are living in the world, what are their needs, how they can fight against poverty. For me, for TRIAID, this is the message we want to tell to everybody. It's very important. Talking about this, also planting, restoring, but also investing to fight against poverty for the well-being of the communities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this is, we have some actionable items, and I'd like to, we'll have an opportunity for a question and answer segment with our panel in just a bit. So if you have any questions, you'll have the chance to ask. But just to summarize, I'm seeing, we've heard from Grace that there's an opportunity to get involved in shifting society's kind of consciousness. If we can share the stories and uplift the voices that are showcasing how restoration can be done, we can make changes. We have an opportunity to help really raise awareness for partnerships, for investment. And I think those are actionable on our side, but I also think there's a level of reflection we all need to take. We've heard about positive tipping points. We believe in restoration, 60, 70% of us. But what are we doing to actually take action? What are we individually doing to make this happen? And so I'll leave that question with us for now. And I'd like to go to Slido and continue this conversation with the restoration implementers in our audience, many of whom are online. And if there are some of you in the room, feel free to answer this question as well. So, to the restoration implementers in our audience, in 1 to 3 words, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing? So we're seeing financial incentives, technical capacities, legal frameworks, policies, governance being a key element. Payments for local people, private sector involvement, the money, where's the finance, where to restore. What I'd like to do now is ask our panelists to pick one of these and share your advice so that you can help some of the audience members overcome this challenge. So George, since you're here, perhaps I'll start with you. Which one seems to speak to you?
Yeah. Where to restore? This is really simple. Where to restore? It's first where the land is really degraded, and also where the community are really struggling with the poverty cycle. What do I mean by poverty cycle? We cut trees, we grow crops, we eat. 3 years after, the land is degraded, we move to another place. Because now it's poor, we don't have the possibility to buy food. We have to go somewhere. So for me, we need to quickly stop this poverty cycle somewhere by investing where to restore the land of this community to allow them to stay there, to improve the soil fertility, to be able to increase the crop production, to diversify what they are producing as food sources and also as income sources. Then we can break the poverty cycle and stop the restoration there. And then we can say, yes, now we are going to balance the restoration and the degradation. And then we think that by the 2030, we'll be sure that the restoration will be up, will be more than the degradation. This is what we think and we can achieve.
Thank you. I love that question, where to restore, because how you answer it has so much of an impact on what actions and results you have. So just the answer on where it's degraded, but also where you have the poverty cycle continuing, it allows us to really reach the holistic restoration that we've talked about. Grace, I don't know if you've had the chance to pick one of the challenges that you'd like to speak to. Can you hear us, Grace? Do you have some advice?
I'm sorry, I cannot see the questions.
Oh.
Maybe Mombu can start first.
Yes, Mambu, did you see a challenge that you'd like to speak to? I saw finance come up in big letters at the end.
I think finance is something that we need, definitely. We've got the people on the ground, we've got the education and the teams, and we can produce the seedlings that we need. Our roads are practically impassable for many times of the year, but we're still able to get the seedlings up there, and we have a community that is actively engaged. When we started this program of tree planting, last year at GLF, we made a commitment to do it in November, and by April, we'd done 11,000 seedlings. The communities where we hadn't yet planted, they came to us and said, why haven't you done us? When are you coming to do us? So we know the need is there. They're very keen to participate in this program. What's stopping us is the financing. So this is a definite need, and we're happy to work with partners on this. I was very interested to hear one of the presentations from the Bezos Earth Fund, and there are others on this meeting who would be able to partner with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have high hopes for what's to come. Grace, do you have a challenge that you'd like to give some advice to?
I think before started, every restoration process is make sure to really know where to start and what is the problem before really starting the restoration project, and really works on how to solve the problem. And also, I think in this COVID situation, it is really important to build a partnership to the local community who already there in the site, and maybe to really focusing how to do the financing also. And yeah, I think that's all. It's really important, and also to search another grant or any donor that really suit to and really suit to our aim or our goals. So yeah, so I think that is for me.
Thank you. I'd like to now, if the audience has any questions, I've collected some from the online, but is there anyone in person that would like to ask a question to our panel? If not, do you have one question? Yeah. Yes, could you bring a mic just right here?
Thank you. I think one of the interesting questions in all the finance guys talk about investable projects. I mean, aid is one thing that's important, but both for Mambu and George, have you thought about how could you get a green bond? How could you make this into an investable project? Because all these people out there want to invest money, and they say there's no investable projects. And very, very important for the decade on ecosystem restoration to figure out how we do that. Do you have ideas on that?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think that investable project, what people need is to tell them the reality of the field first. That investment project is, the project should be developed based on the realities of the field and showing some, maybe, well, some people need some short-term results. Why you cannot invest? You can have some short-term output, yes, but in terms of results, in terms of impact, you need at least 3 years to 5 years. That is very important to know. And second, also, we need to have a strong monitoring and evaluation system in place. Do that, you invest, you assess what's happened, what change, if it's positive or negative change, because sometimes you can also have some negative change, but you have some positive change, then you can scale what you are doing, and then by the end of a project, you can show some great impact to the people who are putting the money to support. And this money should go straight to the communities for whom you develop this project. Because your question is good, because some of the organizations, you can see sometimes 40, 50, even sometimes 60% of a project, the money are going in the bureaucracy, in the administration. You know, yes, we need technicians, we need some equipment, but we should make sure that it should not be the focus of a project. The focus of a project is to invest straight in the field and to see the impact that it can provide. So you encourage the investor to say, okay, yes, our money we are giving, this is the real impact we can see in maybe 2, 3, or 5 years. That's what I think. And the location, we're talking about where to restore. We know that the dryland of Africa is really suffering a lot from these climate change issues. So just show the realities of the fields, of the people living there, and the change you can provide.
Thank you. I'd like to invite maybe Wambu to give a brief response. I see more hands in the room, so if we can keep it short, we can get more questions in.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. We do have investable projects. One of the alternative fuel sources we're looking at is briquettes made from the waste of the Arabica coffee husk, which is generally thrown away. So this would be a substitute for firewood and charcoal. The charcoal market in Uganda is worth in excess of $700 million a year. So it is a large market, and there's a product that can be made to substitute it at lower than the price of production of charcoal. And that's before you take into account the environmental benefits. So we've identified the machinery, the location for the factory, and the sources of the Arabica coffee waste, husk waste, to make these briquettes. We've also identified the potential buyers of the coffee husk waste, who are people in the eastern part of Uganda, a population of about 2 million people. So that is an investable project with numbers ready.
Thank you. I saw another hand here in the front, if we can get a mic.
Thank you. I'm from Papua New Guinea. I'd like to comment on, or ask you questions on the issues on governance. Quite often you talk about, and we have the third largest forestry country in the world, and most of the time when you talk about financing, you talk about sustainability. And my question to you and any of you out there is, what's the most important issues on resources here in financing? Is it the governance issues where communities, developers comes in here and try to work together to support the protection of the forest, or any resources along this line where we have our oceans as well, the biggest ocean in our region, still very warm. This is a governance issue. How do you get communities, and how do you get developers, how do you get financial people to come in to work together? And a lot of this is basically having some trust and confidence. In the history of all these developments coming across, we've come to realize that this is some of the biggest conflicts. Your discussion here, when I look at this, is about having confidence, and it's a governance issues. How much do you give to the communities who have been living there all their lives because these are their resources? And I'd like to hear from some of you here, because this is coming to Paris and looking at these articles of financing. What do the big donors do? Do you get up to support communities who are so vulnerable? Can you have these governance issues sorted out? Can we work in some kind of environment or forum to deal with these issues to support all our communities? We have a number of our challenges here. Any comments on this would be quite useful. Thanks.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to bridge your question with another one from the online audience, from Alejandro from Costa Rica, who works in restoration. But he also brought up the trust element and governance, just saying that you have to be very careful with the approach when you're working with communities, because they don't necessarily trust many initiatives. There have been many efforts, many years, governments, NGOs, will take care of nature, but not of the people. There's a lot of, I think, intricacies there around trust on both ends. So if you'd like to answer either one of those questions, it would be wonderful. Perhaps I'll go to Grace first.
Yeah, so based on my experience regarding coral restorations, sometimes, so in carbon ethics, I'm working in carbon ethics also, and we do this project with the carbon ethics. So basically, we got like the funding and etc. It is from the CSR, or this is from the donor from the other company. So basically, we are pitching our deck and how we can reduce emissions. So in carbon ethics, we not only do the restoration of coral itself, but we also do like the mangrove and etc. So we begin like the demystifying about how the climate change impact us, and how the other company is have like the responsible to make it a net zero. So basically, from the fund from the company in Indonesia, so we basically do the planting and etc. So we get like the funding to restore the coral and also the mangrove, and we also have also plant the seagrass also. Yeah, so I think that's all for me.
Perfect. Mwambu, would you like to answer?
Yes, Wantok, thank you very much for your question, and for the gentleman from Costa Rica. Trust is essential. How we build trust? Well, on the issue of the tree planting, we have an agroforestry expert who visits the communities. He's from the community, speaks the language, and they acknowledge his expertise. And they have seen over a period of time what he has done for the other people in the community. On the issue of if we were to, I think on the investable project, I think the issue there is slightly different, because The farmers produce coffee, and they don't actually end up producing the coffee that's ready to be roasted. So their coffee is taken somewhere else and hulled, and the husks come from when the coffee is hulled. The husk is the dried skin of the coffee. So we would then be taking this back to them to use as a fuel, the briquettes from the coffee husk weight to use as a fuel in their communities. So they'll be able to see that there is no need for them, there's less need for them to go cut trees down or burn charcoal. So I think that would build trust as well. And we work very closely with the communities. We're there a lot. They know us by name very well. So obviously once you start to scale a project, then you'd need to go into new communities and build up that relationship. But we believe because we're from that area and we speak one language, that we have a lot of elements of trust already in that relationship.
Thank you. It reminds me of what Galina Angarova had said. She doesn't believe in scalable solutions, but everything comes locally. Would you like to answer on either governance or the other question? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a good question because, first of all, when you hear all the announcement, but it's not following but the real action in the field. So that makes the communities to be really, to not trust again and all the big decisions we are taking. You know, in Paris, we announced 40 billion CFA for the green wall, but today, even $1 we cannot see in the field. That is a big problem of governance. And second, I think that as tree aid, we trust that we are not competitors. First, we have the same target, which are the communities. So partnership, multi-actor in the field and in the progressive approach to provide the best solution, the best responses, and support the communities. And we promote also a kind of a dialogue with our community entry approach, which really put the communities in confidence, and then they identify and choose themselves the solution, the type of trees they want to plant, and then the type of activities for the land and forest restoration. Then with all support you provide, it's a kickoff for these communities then to scale the activities and the solution we are providing to them. So for tree aid, we think that the same target, we should be a good partnership and build the trust with the communities.
Thank you. I hate to close the session, but I do have to now. But the good thing is we're still together online. We have some people in person, so the conversation can go on. And there was one last question also from the online audience. I'll take the liberty of answering it. Daniel Deborah had asked, what really are the requirements for financial institutions that support restoration projects? And I guess your answer to that is stay tuned for Finance Day on Sunday, where we'll dive even deeper into that and get to answer some of these questions on funding. So can everyone just give a round of applause to this panelists for this session? So there were so many challenges in the poll. I am seeing them in the back, so many different actions that we need to take. And we need, the reason I kept coming back to what can we do? There was a message from the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, who said, we need action now, not in the next year, not in the next decade, now. So it is really important that we ask ourselves, what are we doing? And how are we meeting some of the capacity needs, whether that's picking the right species or writing a grant proposal? How can we support? So I want to take the time to invite to the stage for the last segment of this plenary, yes, 2 individuals who are taking action now. So please join me in first welcoming to the stage Ottilie Balz, the Senior Vice President, Climate Change and Migration from the Robert Bosch Foundation, to share a very special message with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the great contributions to this session. It's a wonderful opportunity for all of us to learn more about opportunities and challenges of restoration initiatives on the ground. As we all know, we only have a small window of opportunity left to achieve the targets of the Paris Agreement and the goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we as a Robert Bosch Stiftung are dedicated to using this window to support a just transition and a fundamental paradigm shift in the land use sector. This transition is based on holistic solutions that protect the climate, safeguard biodiversity, reduce inequality, and strengthen resilience. And that is why we are very proud to partner with the Global Landscapes Forum to support the establishment of 5 new GLF-X chapters in the Greater Sahel region. GLF provides much needed support for local actors by building communities of practice and connecting the local level to international networks and resources. We are impressed by the power, the passion, and the commitment that we have seen in so many creative application videos from the Greater Sahel region, featuring inspiring young people who are mobilizing a diverse range of stakeholders on the ground in an equitable way. The 5 selected chapters are Ibadan, Yaoundé, Ouagadougou, and Kambé and Baokou. All chapters try to play their part in the creation of multifunctional landscapes that will be more sustainable, equitable, productive, resilient, and prosperous. And I'm very pleased that one representative of one of the chapters, Chido Uwaecha, can be here today. He is the founder of Ripple Heights and the host of the GLF-X Ibadan chapter. The Ibadan chapter impressed us with its visionary team, a multi-stakeholder approach, and an elaborated long-term plan on farmer engagement and empowerment. And I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the 5 selected chapters, but also to say a big thank you to all of the other applicants for their continuous work on the ground. And I would also like to thank the Global Landscapes Forum for its important contribution to bridging global efforts and action on the ground. We are very much looking forward to seeing the GLF-X community thrive in the years to come, strengthening existing and building new partnerships. As a Robert Bosch Stiftung, we will continue to do our small part to contribute to the UN Restoration Decade and to support local actors in their restoration efforts. We do hope that more funders will join this and other important initiatives to help restore African violence and contribute to resilient landscapes for the communities most affected by climate change and land degradation. Thank you very much, and over to you, Chido.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your support to the real action that GLF is driving. Community-led chapters on the ground. So welcome our coordinator of the new Ibadan chapter.
Thank you very much, Lina, and thank you, Otili. Yeah, what can I say? I'd like to start off by what's this all about? It's about forest, food, finance, restoration. So I'd like to kick off to say, what do we need to do? What role do we need to play in this? Me and you. What role do we need to play? So exactly what's expected from you is to support and embrace the mission. The mission is very real, and I believe once we can support and embrace that mission, the ecosystem will be fully fortified and protected. So I'd like to say I'm highly delighted in being part of this journey, and I'm highly pleased in being in Glasgow for the launch of the new Sahel chapter. It's been quite a journey, and I believe that we have the strength, we have the bandwidth to tackle this problem as the foot soldiers that we are, and make this a reality moving forward. So my name is Chiedu Uwechia, and I'm the founder Ripple Heights Development Initiative. What's Ripple Heights? Many people say it is. Ripple Heights is a charity, and it's a robust, I would say it's a charity with a twist. It's not like most of the other charities you come across, in the sense that we run off three robust initiatives, which is Water is Life, Slum to Leak, and Go Agro Initiative. We have developed a lot of projects, community development-based projects in Africa. We have built and installed borehole facilities in Africa for needy communities. We have also kicked off our sporting initiative, which is called the Slum to Leak package. And now we are actually working hand in hand with, or in collaboration with GLF and Robert Bosch Foundation. So I would say, what do we need to look out for moving forward? So what we need to look out for, basically, like I said, we are actually going to be delivering this mission. And the key focus we're going to be looking at, we've already started, my team on ground in Africa has already started engaging with the community and building their confidence, and also at the same time trying to form different clusters of for farmers, trying to build that network and make sure that all the farmers actually are in sync and aligned to that mission, and because we need them to make this possible and to make this a done deal. So I would say that it's a continuous process, because there's obviously loads of sustainability kind of roadmap that has to be put in place, because I don't believe it's a one-time fix. It's not a one-time fix, and I believe it has to be continuous. So I don't really have too much to say, but I would like to thank Robert Bosch, most especially for having that confidence in us, Ripple Heights, and I can guarantee them, in collaboration with GLFX, that we will not let them down. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to share, if you want to learn more about the many chapters that GLF is supporting to drive restoration, to drive sustainable food production on the ground, you can look at the Restoration Alliance. There is a session where it will be unveiled today. So you can really see how GLF is supporting action on the ground. But I just want to thank you, everyone. Please do join, learn more, ask yourself what you can do. It's so super important. So I'll welcome Aditi back to the stage to share a little bit more about what we have coming next.
Wonderful. Thank you. So for the sessions coming up, you might want to check the agenda online to pick your favorite one. But in short, you can decide either to stay here in the Butte Hall, where at 4:15 we'll have a session by the Rainforest Alliance on community forests and how to scale their contribution to the climate resilience in the tropics, or to move on to the Senate room, where at 4 there's the Resilient Landscapes will lead conversation on the Papua New Guinea, sustaining forests for climate, people, and nature. And I hope you'll be able to find the Senate room. There are people to guide you there. Thank you.